No one heard screams in that valley, only the creaking of shattered shields and the dry crack of spears splitting bone. When the sun set, not a single Roman was left alive, and yet not one enemy dared to touch their bodies. Some swear the barbarians retreated not in victory but in fear. They say the earth still bears the marks of shields, buried like silent tombstones. It was the legion that chose to die standing rather than live on their knees. But what drives men to face certain death and still advance? What order was given that day? What secret made 1,000 soldiers choose absolute sacrifice? This is not a story of glory, it is a story of an oath. And in Rome, oaths were worth more than life itself. Before everything ended, they had a choice, and still they marched. Why? Are you ready to learn about the day an entire legion chose not to return? If this story has already stirred something within you in these first moments, then you understand. Some battles are not merely told, they are felt. Before we delve into the secrets of this lost legion, make your oath. Leave your like now and subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but for memory. Each new subscriber is another shield in this formation, another voice against oblivion. Comment, I would march if you would have the courage to stand beside them until the end. Your presence here is not coincidence, it is a summons. They were known as the Legio IX Hispana, but among the legionaries themselves, another name was whispered in the camps, those who do not retreat. They marched north into the mist-laden forests of Britannia, where even the sun dared not linger. There was no glory in that mission, only silence and tales of tribes that vanished without trace. It was said the enemy warriors did not fear death, for they believed they fought alongside their gods. Even so, the Ninth advanced in perfect formation, shields locked, steps firm. Among them, no one spoke of fear, for in Rome, fear was a forbidden luxury. The general, a man of scars and stone-cold eyes, said only, "None of us will return as we came." But what did he know that the others did not? Why did his gaze carry farewell? When they crossed the final river, they noticed no one followed. They were alone, as if Rome had already buried them. But to march toward death is a choice, so why did they not turn back? The forest was not only dense, it was alive. Twisted branches, fog crawling like a serpent, and no birdsong, as if even the animals had deserted. The Ninth advanced in forced silence, for even command seemed to profane something sacred. Then the scouts did not return. 3 men, experts in tracking footprints as scribes read scrolls, vanished without echo, without scream, without trace. They found only a shield embedded in a tree, not broken, but hung like a warning. Some soldiers made the sign of the gods, others clenched their fists. The general, without changing his tone, gathered them and said, "Forget Rome. From here on, we fight for each other." In that instant, the oath changed. They no longer marched for Caesar, but for the man beside them. The mist grew thicker, the ground wetter, and the air too heavy to be just air. Every crack of leaves was an enemy step. But if they knew they were being hunted, why did they keep advancing? There was an ambush ahead, but none imagined the true enemy was not human. The ambush did not come with battle cries, nor in waves of warriors, but in whispers. When night fell, they camped in defensive formation following Caesar's code, central fire, alternating sentries, guarded lines. But in that forest, Rome's rules held no power. A dense fog enveloped everything, and the fire, no matter how fiercely it burned, could not illuminate more than a single step ahead. Sentries vanished without a sound. Only the faint clang of a fallen sword revealed another life extinguished. When they finally saw something, it was not the enemy. It was a legionary, bound between 2 trees, on his knees, eyes open, and without a tongue. No tribe would leave a man like that. This was a message. The general then spoke the words, no Roman ever wished to hear. They do not want to win, they want to erase. The soldiers looked at one another. This was no longer war. This was condemnation, yet the 9th Legion was made of men bound by an oath never to retreat, even before the impossible. And when dawn came, they chose to fight to the last. But how do you battle the unseen? At first light, no doubt remained in any man's eyes. They knew this would not be a battle, but the final stand. The general gathered the centurions in a circle. No strategies, no maps, only a question. Who retreats? Silence. Absolute. One by one, the legionaries drove their shields into the wet ground, forming a semicircle, not as defense, but as a vow. From that moment, any man who fled would be deemed the enemy. Then the aquilifer, the standard bearer, raised the eagle not to lead a charge, but to seal graves. Some wept, not from fear, but from honor. They would fight not for Rome, which had forgotten them, but for the memory of their names. A young legionary asked the general, "And if we win?" He answered without lifting his gaze from the forest, "Then we will know the gods still look upon us." No drumbeat, no trumpet. Yet in that moment, something was born, something even Caesar could not command, the pact to die together. But oaths carry a price, and theirs would be paid on a field never found. The attack did not come in charges, it came like a storm. From within the fog, spears flew with no visible hands. Arrows fell like black rain from every side. But the 9th Legion did not waver. The centurion of the first cohort ordered testudo, and Roman shields locked into a living fortress. Each impact thundered against iron. The earth shook, but not one man stepped back. A legionary, struck in the neck, still pushed another behind him, murmuring, "Hold the line." They did not shout Roma. They marched forward in silence. With every step they sought not victory, but remembrance. As long as they advanced, as long as they breathed, they would prove Rome still lived in that forgotten forest. When a barbarian scream echoed in the distance, the Romans answered with silence, more terrifying than any roar. One enemy froze at the sight of their eyes, not pleading for mercy, but demanding witness. Yet the true horror had not begun. It would come when testudo finally broke. The testudo, which had sealed so many victories, cracked like timber in a storm. A boulder hurled from a hill crushed the foremost shield and split the formation. Through that breach, death entered. The enemy did not emerge as armies, but as shadows leaping from the mist. The battle became personal, gladius against axe, eye against hatred. A centurion was brought down by 3 warriors, yet before he fell, he drove his blade into the ground, as if declaring, "No one crosses this line." Mud turned crimson. The aquilifer, with one arm broken, raised the eagle standard with the other. Each Roman fought not to win, but to delay the end. They did not cry, "Roma." They cried the names of their sons, their wives, their promises. And then came the moment none expected. The barbarians stepped back, not from fatigue, but because they saw, in the eyes of the last survivors, a fire that even death could not extinguish. What did those enemies see? To retreat before men already defeated. Barely 50 remained. No formation, no command. Only scattered men among trees drenched in blood, some fighting with broken blades. Yet none fled. A young legionary, wounded in the knee, dragged himself to a tree, propped himself upright, and kept striking at anyone who approached. None cried out for rescue. They cried for memory, for they knew. If they fell fleeing, Rome would call them missing. But if they fell fighting, the world would call them oath. One barbarian, face painted, raised his axe to finish a Roman and withdrew. There was no fear in the legionary's gaze, only an invitation, as if saying, "Go on, try to erase my name." The battle halted for moments, not as truce, but in awe. The enemies realized they were not fighting men. They were fighting living tombstones. And then came the silence, the most terrible of all. The moment they chose where to die. With strength fading, the survivors gathered in a clearing swallowed by mist. No orders were given, yet all knew what to do. They formed a circle, not for attack, but for farewell. They drove their shields into the ground, pillars of iron, and leaned upon them. Some could no longer stand, but rose using the weight of their shields. A centurion, blood on his lips, whispered, "Here, no one falls alone." Not one enemy dared strike. There was something sacred in that act. They did not raise weapons. They raised oaths. The sun pierced the mist not to reveal faces, but silhouettes, human statues, unbowed. When the last Roman fell, the standard remained standing among the shields, as though someone still held it. The victors, armed and triumphant, stepped back in silence. Some say they buried the bodies in a circle, mimicking how they stood, as if fearing to disturb something Roman or divine. But what did Rome do when it learned? Did it honor its dead or erase them? When the news reached Rome, there were no bodies, no prisoners, no scrolls of report. The 9th Legion had simply vanished. Some senators tried to erase its name from the records, fearing rumors of a curse. But among the legionaries of other cohorts, the story spread like fire on powder. They fought to the last man, not for orders, not for glory, but for something Rome had forgotten: honor without witness. They say a single shield was found, with a phrase carved by blade: "No one," retreated. That shield was never displayed in triumphs. It was not shown to crowds. It was passed in silence only among generals, men who understood the weight of an oath. The 9th Legion did not fail. They fulfilled the oldest vow of all: to die standing. Centuries later, historians tried to prove they never existed, but as long as there are men willing to fight for what no one will ever see, the 9th will continue marching in the mist. Because some victories do not live on maps. They live in memories that refuse to be forgotten. And you? Would you fight to the end, even knowing no one would ever tell your story?